man. Is that a deicide skate deck behind you?
Of course it is.
And the shining, what is that, a pillow, couch?
It's a throw rug, yeah. I've
Yeah,
had
we're
this
gonna
thing
get
forever.
along. We're gonna
Hell
get
yeah,
along
dude.
just fine.
Fuck yeah, man. Thanks
How
for
you
the
doing,
chat,
David?
dude. Appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
exceptionally well today, man.
Cool, man. I'm glad we're doing this, dude. I heard the record when it came out. I loved it. And I'm always kind of stuck on having to listen to shit all the time mode, you know. Uh,
hmm
but I heard it, loved it, and revisited it more recently. And I don't know if I was fresher. I hadn't listened to a full album in a couple days, you know, kind of like let my system empty out a little bit. And I put it on the other day, and yeah, I'm glad I did. It's a phenomenal album. It's so much fun. The guitar parts especially are just a lot of fun. So you're from Australia, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Originally, firstly, thank you. Appreciate you picking it up again.
For sure.
Before we go into Australia, I guess yeah, I think it is a record that you kind of do need to come back more than once. Yeah, there's a lot to kind of digest in the record. So I do feel that, if you listen to it a second, third, fourth time, your feelings on it may be a little bit different the first time. And we kind of designed it that way as well.
I
It's
can attest.
intentionally.
Yeah, I can attest to having quite a different experience with it the second time, which I was kind of shocked at. You know, like I said, I loved it the first time, but there's like the reason I bring up Australia is because I feel like Australia is known as kind of a fun, playful, carefree, sort of wild place, and that's what I was picking up the second time I heard it. Like some of the slide riffs and you're writing a lot of the riffs, I would imagine.
Yeah, all the riffs. Yeah.
There is I don't know how else to say it other than when I found out you're from Australia, it made sense. It just
Oh,
made
cool.
sense. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how'd you end up in Vancouver?
It was an airplane. Caught me from Australia. Sorry,
You get
terrible.
sick of this one, I'm sure.
Honestly, it wasn't a happy it wasn't a happy time for me. Yeah, I was pretty sad, pretty lost. I needed to do some soul searching. I had a working holiday visa for Canada, which is pretty easy to obtain if you're under 35 years of age, anywhere in the Commonwealth to any other Commonwealth country. I just needed to just kind of say fuck you to my boss at the time and just packed up all my shit and sold everything else. And yeah, just bought a one-way flight to Toronto, where I had been previously, enjoyed it, and just intended to let the wind carry me for a little bit until I figured some things out. And I ended up in Vancouver, and I think maybe 6, 7 months after being here, I met Luca, our drummer, and started music again. I had a big break from music for about 8 years before that. So in many ways, it was like learning how to play guitar again, but in other ways, like riding a bike. So uh, yeah, that's kind of the short version of it all. But yeah, I've been here almost 7 years now. But yeah, very very different places, and I think that you are right in Australia being a pretty carefree place in a lot of aspects. I think Australian people at large are probably more comparable to the East Coast of the US, where people just don't really have time to fuck around too much. They just kind of say what they feel like and just get on with it.
I
Um,
appreciate that a lot. I grew up in the American South, and you guys kind of remind me in good ways of people from the South. Very
oh,
earnest and straightforward and sort of wild, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that's got to do with, it has kind of evolved on its own to have its own culture that's pretty separated from everywhere else. So, it's got its highlights. The culture is definitely one of those, but, at least for the time that I was living there, it's probably changed a lot now, but, it was quite xenophobic and quite racist in a lot of parts of Australia outside of the big cities and stuff. So, Yeah, it's interesting. Um, we got all the animals that everybody likes to talk about as well, but the bands are fucking nuts. Like I feel like a lot of people really kind of missed out um, on a lot of magic coming from Australia just because they weren't on major labels that I was fortunate enough to grow up and soak in. So I'm very grateful for living in Australia for reasons like that. And we talk about those slide riffs and things like that in particular. They all came from bands like Damaged back in Australia, which I implore everybody to go check out. Um, so I guess in some ways, the Australian metal sound has just kind of becomes part of my DNA in some ways, but it's cool that you
Yeah,
hear it.
I hear I have a very I will admit I have a very limited frame of reference for the world that Atrae Bilis is operating in. I am a big fan of certain bands that I would say are in that general vicinity, like Replicant from New Jersey, sort
Mm.
of a more modern, technical, really tight, robotic, but in a cool kind of way. But at the same time, I hear like, for me, Australia, the first things that come to mind are like Faceless Burial and Portal.
Mm.
And I know they're dirty dogs from the other side of the ditch, but ulcerate as well. I
Hmm.
hear some of the. I don't know how you manage to be so technical, but so melancholy and with such emotion. And I would say like the be all end all band for that general kind of approach for me would be like Meshuggah.
Mm.
It's as technical and crushing and robot. I described them as kind of like Skynet becoming self-aware and destroying humanity. And your music gives me that same sort of vibe, yet at the same time it manages to have such melancholy. And then it sounds like maybe you were going through some stuff leading up to this band, and I relate to what you said earlier about just kind of needing to maybe start a new chapter, or yeah, just force a change or something. I did something very similar. I was living in Arkansas for a while and uh was kind of, yeah, nose diving, just in life
Hmm.
in a lot of different ways. And I moved to Arizona, started some projects there, and it worked out very well. So I'm glad to see it's working out for you. But I can hear, I hear some sort of melancholy and deep emotion despite the technical nature of the music.
Mm. Yeah, wow, thank you. I try not to psychoanalyze the music too much, but whether I like it or not, my personality is always going to come out with any way that I express myself, whether that be through guitar or anything else. So yeah, I think you're right in hearing that I was definitely going through some things leading up to Aumicide. I mean, it is a very bleak record. It's a very cathartic record. Thankfully, I was able to also use a lot of that catharsis through the lyrics of the record too. Um, as far as the technicality is concerned, it's an interesting one because we genuinely, all of us in the band, do not consider ourselves to be a technical leaning band. And I do get that, a lot of the riffs and, especially like the detailing with the drums following certain fills and syncopation with the guitars and things like that have definitely got like a very, there's an intensity about it. But we are really just trying to just play enjoyable, sick riffs, in the same way that Suffocation have got really long riffs that are fun to play. Um, we do try to write songs that are going to be fun as hell to play night after night, that also kind of keep us on our toes, songs that don't let us get too complacent and too comfortable being away from our instruments for too long. So it's a balancing act, but it's all about stimulation more than anything else. But if you were to break things down, yes, there might be a riff that might go 1.5 times, and then that second half may take an earlier section from a previous riff and slap it on the end. That's not really as technical as it is just trying to be innovative with the songwriting, I think, in the functionality of the riff. But, you know, everybody's open to different interpretations. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. What you just described is kind of more of like the things that were going on maybe on Master of Puppets on a song like Sanitarium or something, just having maybe two extra beats in a measure, or like you said, like one and a half passes of a riff instead of two or four or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You also
Mm-hmm.
have to consider the guy that's saying your music is super technical, just like repurposes Leonard Skinner licks and Black Sabbath riffs. So for me, it's like it's pretty technical.
No,
I got
it's
some
great, man.
questions.
You sure?
Yeah, I wrote some questions down because as I was listening to it this most recent time, there was stuff I wanted to definitely remember to ask you. Um, so there's a vocal effect. I love, again, like playful, experimental, bizarro, sort of risk taking type production stuff, especially like vocal effects and stuff. So there's a vocal effect that reminds me of a few different things. The movie Creepshow, the segment with Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen,
I can
right?
hold my breath for a long
Yeah, yeah.
time.
When they come back as water zombies, and then obviously a band like Morbid Angel, you hear it maybe on like God of Emptiness, where the slime live. But you guys do it in a lot of really cool ways. There's one where it's like you're like turning up the delay, and there's four, I think, like tap tempo delays, and it's like you're bringing that effect up as the delays are hitting. And I can't say that I've ever heard anybody do that. So you don't have to give out any trade secrets, but I am curious about what the hell is going on there.
Again, I I think it's just part of expression. I mean, we we're really fortunate to work with Christian Donaldson of Cryptopsy. I'm sure you know of Christian's work. The guy's he's a mastermind. Um, but he was just so open to trying different ideas, and a lot of those ideas were just things that I would hear when I was listening to the music, and so they were demoed that way as well. Um, I think you know how they sound sonically in the mix is definitely down to Christian. The clean vocal Morbid Angel sections that you hear are Luca, our drummer. He's got a very cool baritone voice. That almost predator vocal with the tremolo that you may be referring to.
Hmm.
Um, that is, we started doing that on Apex Sapien, the album before this, and that is it's slightly pitch shifted with a tremolo effect put over it, but then we harmonize it with like a natural unaffected vocal so that it's still somewhat audible. And in hindsight now, I kind of wish that we had actually reversed those lyrics and reversed those effects, because the band is very spiritual, and you know the Hermetic philosophy of as above so below is very entwined with our lyrics, and a lot of the time when that lyric is kind of calling back out, we'll use that effect as if there's you know a pole difference between Jordan and this other voice, this other entity. So I think we got close, but in hindsight, if it was reversed, it would be a true opposite of Jordan's clean vocal. So maybe you'll hear some things that sound like they're in another language on the next record. Um,
Cool.
that way, and yeah, I'm sure there's more. Oh, the meditation in the title track is both Christian and myself. Um, just yeah, in mantra in his studio. Uh, yeah,
Now
yeah. There's a few
you're
things
speaking
going
my
on.
language with the hermetic stuff and the meditation
Mm,
and stuff like that. I try to encode all the music I make with something more, you know, that's
mhm,
maybe not
mhm.
on the surface. And you know, I think most people, even if they're not conscious of that, if they're really listening and really making a conscious decision to experience the album or the song, even if they're not consciously aware of what you're doing, they're going to be intuitively or subconsciously aware of something powerful, or at least
Mm,
that's the goal, I would say. And I also very much relate to uh, micro analyzing stuff that you think could be better, but that the fans think is great. I think those parts
yes.
are incredible. But I get it. I get it for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for noticing too, because a lot of people are quite closed off to those. I wouldn't really call them risks, but I, I guess some people might consider them to be, um, especially with the guitar effects. You know, a lot of people I've read, anyways, like, oh, I love it, except they do this weird stuff, and it's just too much. And it's like, well, I mean, we could have been subtle about it, but like that's not very proud. And
Why?
I don't,
I
yeah,
was actually I was gonna specifically ask about the guitar glitch sound. Is that a bit commander or something? Again, you don't have
no,
to. Okay.
no, that is just an extremely fast rate tremolo. That's
Wow.
all it is. Yeah, yeah. There's no other effect. So yeah, it's very fast, and it's, yeah, it's very choppy. But that guitar effect, I've mentioned this in a couple of other interviews. I'm not sure if anybody listening to this has already heard this, but that was inspired by a quasi psychedelic experience that I was trying to recreate, so that when we do play it, I'm put back into that space, like a flashback almost.
Was
So
that like
I
a meditation induced or like chemically
no,
induced?
it was multiple chemically soupy, very, yeah, it was a very strange place.
Well, it
Um,
comes across in the guitar sound. I can
yeah,
tell you that you accomplished it for sure.
thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So going back to the vocals before we move on,
sure.
I usually dislike bands that mix clean vocals and like death metal vocals or extreme vocals, however you want to describe them. And my old bandmate Chase from Gate Creeper had a great, funny description of that, which was good cop, bad cop vocals.
Mm, yeah.
And I feel like most of the time, for me personally, they don't work. But the bands that do it, that I think to great effect, are, for me at least, bands like older Opeth
Mhm.
and Yob. I think Mike from Yob is like, as a one person, producer of both vocal styles, he's just kind of the pinnacle of that approach for me. But you guys do it so well, and clearly, as you described earlier, I just think there's so much thought put into dichotomy and stuff like that, and it doesn't have that there's melody and it is clean vocals, but it sounds more like proclamation from like the top of a cliff rather than like a guy doing like a whiny chorus and then a metalcore vocal or something. So it really works,
Yeah.
man. And I'm glad you guys do that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Jordan, our main vocalist, did more cleans on this record than he's ever done before. Most of the cleans historically had been from Luca, our drummer. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure like where that vibe's coming from. It could be that we do we do put a lot of thought into things, and so making sure that if we do have that counterpoint, or the dichotomy as you just described it, is important. But we also definitely need to be like very focused and understand that, like, yeah, this is like a really horrible sounding record, and we need to snap out of these like sections of prettiness pretty quickly for the ugliness to kind of come back. So um, it may be that you're just kind of not in the pocket of melody for too long before things start swinging around a little bit. We're still getting better at our craft, but yeah, definitely appreciate you appreciating that. And the whiny vocals, I'm the same. I can't do the whiny vocals, and I also can't do lyrics where people are singing about, I feel this, I feel that, me. Like, go to therapy, dude.
Yeah, there's plenty
So
of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I thankfully, because all the lyrics for this band are written kind of, not even really quite third person, but just more of like a documentary kind of, statement story kind of prose. It does remove us from ever hitting any clean notes that are the evocative um, sensations will come from the music, I hope, and the vocals. Just as you said, proudly kind of pushing that forward, as opposed to it being centered on, you know, some ego-related thing, maybe.
Right. That makes sense. This is Big Riff Energy, so I want to talk about some riff highlights that popped out. We mentioned the super fun. Fun is the word that comes to mind. Slide riffs in the first track. I feel like there's, for such a brutal record, that's a moment of, at least for me as a guy that tries to write riffs, most days, that just seems so fun to me. And I imagine that maybe there might have even been some laughter when you discovered that one. Do you remember writing that one?
Um, yeah, I mean, I do and I don't. Like, this band's very, like, we try and hit we rehearse enough 3 days a week typically, that we just hit a flow state. So our chops are up, we're in writing mode, and it's just about serving the song. Most of the riffs that end up in songs usually come from me either just dialing in some tones and just like getting my fingers warmed up, for somebody else to say, hey, that's really cool, like, can we try do something with that? Or somebody will just like start playing along. I don't remember exactly what happened with that riff, but I also don't remember caring enough about it to be like, oh, I've been working on this and I've just arrived at this point. um, I do remember, I mean, there are certain guitar playing styles that I wish more people would kind of bring back. I had mentioned this band Damaged previously that everybody should go check out. Another is Brutal Truth. I think Brutal Truth are definitely
Hmm.
one of those bands that do some very interesting, unique, out of the box, on their own terms, grindcore that is, it's incredible. So, when I try and think about like cool, colorful riffs, if you will, like, they're usually players from those types of bands, and I'm just kind of interpreting what they do in my own way. Um, but yeah, it's a cool riff. It's really fun to play live too, because I guess you can just kind of slam your guitar as much as you like, and the more you do, the better it sounds. So
Yeah.
it's one of one of the, I guess, it's one of the points of the set where it's just like, oh yeah, fuck it, I'm just letting myself really go, and the more manic and frantic it gets, the cooler it is. So.
Those are crucial, man. A lot of times I have forgotten to make sure that what I'm writing is going to be fun to play live. A lot of the stuff I wrote for Spirit Adrift, I'd never anticipated playing live with a band. So it's fun every once in a while to intentionally write a part that's, this one's just going to be fun to play live. Like that's the only goal. I also want to mention to the folks listening who haven't checked out the record, please check it out. The other riff that jumped out to me is at the end of a track called Kingdom of Cortisol. And the first description that popped into my mind is, man, this sounds like they're playing every Cannibal Corpse riff at the same time.
That's so sick, dude. Is that the hammering riff between
Lots of
like
hammers.
between that obnoxious beatdown thing that we do at the end of the song?
Yeah, it starts, I feel like the bass is maybe doing something simpler than the guitars, and you guys are doing a lot of hammer on pull off, like the Cannibal
Hmm.
thing. But then the bass joins you, but then there's like harmonies, and the bass isn't
Yes.
quite playing the same exact thing.
Yes.
That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun, and that's total cannibal worship. There's a lot of other cannibal worship styles of riffing that were writing with. Well, I mean, we've written with, but the riffs or the songs just didn't make it to the final cut on the records. But there's a really fun one that we have, which is more of those like pick blasts that Jack Owen used to write a lot during the Chris Barnes era of Cannibal Corpse, that I absolutely just love the sound of, especially under, you know, just like a nice mid-tempo bomb blast. And the cool thing about those riffs is they're so easy to just like downstroke out of and just create that melodic counterpoint and then open and then back to it. So yeah, there's a lot of Cannibal Corpse style riffing that I would like to hear more people doing, but I guess it just gives me more opportunity to do. So, but yes, very Cannibal, big Cannibal fans here in this house.
Love it.
So,
Love
yeah.
it. Yeah, everybody. I hear they're trying to cancel Cannibal Corpse now
Uh,
retroactively. I can't even believe
uh,
it. It's too late, guys. It's too late.
oh
Give it up.
man. I mean, I don't know. It's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to go into that. So I'm sure that you've been asked about this a lot. Usually I would have the record sitting behind me. I have ordered the record. I'm actually even going to throw the fucking receipt up on the screen once I edit
Oh,
this to prove
thank
that
you.
that I got the record. I picked it up with the Fugitive 7-inch because I have yet to own a physical copy of that as well.
Awesome.
But I'm gonna also throw. I think 20 buck is like slammed right now because I ordered it a while ago. But all good, no hate. I'm
I
gonna throw the
mean,
art.
this is
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean this is their fault for putting out so many insanely sick releases and
Yeah,
just being such a small operation. It's like
yeah, yeah. Stop
it's
killing it
crazy.
so hard, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so I'm gonna throw the artwork up on the screen. I did read about this a while ago. I think around the time the record was released. Um, Dude, to me, it is so impressive. I'm sorry, that's my dog's dinner alarm. Reckless by Judas Priest.
sick.
Yeah. Um, it's their favorite song. But yeah, it's so impressive and I admire so much the ability to make an image and an album cover in 2024 that is shocking and horrific and disturbing. And I just think that's like so hard to pull off these days because everything's been done and we've seen gore in movies. We've seen, you know, I mean, the gory album covers started 30 years ago, you know. So to be able to arrive at a visual representation of something that is like deeply disturbing is quite a challenge these days, but you guys did it. And that's a real statue, huh? That's like a real sculpture.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want me to pull it out? I'll show
Yes,
you.
I was hoping you had it.
Yeah. So here we go. So this is it. I'm not sure you're going to be able to see everything too well, but this is a full latex mold, and you can see there's like structural ribs and stuff there to kind of hold it together, and it flops like a real thing. But up close, it's really amazing to see their attention to detail. You can see like the veins underneath the skin, um, and it was when we have the deeper conversation, it'll be interesting to kind of put up the email communications from them, because they were doing so much research into like how translucent skins would be at like a particular age of gestation, or growth and things like that, and they were sending us back reference photos of all this stuff. And then there are these cables that are kind of in here as well. So the album art is a photograph, and it was a difficult image in some ways to conceive, because it needed to tie in with the concept of the album, which is all about how would you simulate hell? Like if you were to manipulate one's perception, how would it be possible to arrive at a place where it's absolutely faithless? There's no God, there's no happiness, there's no reprieve, there's no comfort. And so the idea is that this specimen that we've just pulled out is this prototype, this sentient prototype that has had its nervous system filled with wires and conduit that would effectively, it would alter its sensory perceptions of its reality. So it has no eyes, it has no mouth. Everything's going straight into the brain and the brain cortex or the nervous system itself. So that its entire living life is just in this pain, agony, in a way that it would be almost impossible for this mind to be able to meditate into a safe space. And the larger question is if we had, an entire community or society of people, that were living godless existences, like what would that do to the egregore, the collective consciousness as we know it? So when coming back to the artwork, it was like, how the hell do we illustrate that? And it's going to be very difficult to present an image of perception, so we decided to kind of stand back and take a photo of what the tests may look like instead. So we never had any intention of making it gory, although it is quite disturbing to look at. Lyrically, it's quite a disturbing concept. Like there's zero reprieve. So the art was primarily driven by the story itself, and we also didn't want to use any AI. So we decided to take a photo. We did ask a couple of artists before we decided to go down the practical effects route, and some of them were quite good, but ultimately we decided that with the fidelity that we were trying to portray, we didn't want our cover to look like a fantasy world. We wanted it to look very real, and for it to feel like it's right there in front of your face, so that it's more difficult to just kind of brush it aside and say, oh, it's just a painting, it's fine. If we saw these Cannibal Corpse covers as photographs, my God, like how we perceive that band would be totally different, and how we hear the music would be totally different. And of course there are bands that do that and whatever, that's not our thing, but we did want to try and capture a very real moment with the artwork. So we're not trying to insult anybody by doing this. We're not trying to upset anybody by doing this. We're just trying to illustrate what the album is about in some way. What you see is the easiest way to really describe what's going on lyrically.
Right. And you said it's, not gory. I agree with that. But it is disturbing, but even more so, I think the word that comes to mind is provocative. Now, a lot of people would associate provocative with like trying to negatively rile people up or something like that, but really like look at the phrase thought provoking. To me that image is provocative emotionally and thought provoking, because I have my own life references that sort of came to mind. That thing could sort of exist in the Matrix. I saw that movie when I was 11, or part of me looked at it and saw the first Alien film, something sort of xenomorphic, or you can look at it as humans merging with technology, which we're already kind of on that path, and maybe looking at like the absolute worst possible outcome of human technology synthesis. But all the coolest stuff, all the coolest music to me is provocative and open to the interpretation of whoever's enjoying and experiencing it. But at the same time, the other thing I really appreciate about this whole situation is the amount of thought and the amount of work and the amount of real care and attention to detail that went into every element of this record, including that, you know. And
Hmm.
I think that's so, I don't think that that's lacking in our world, our little, you know, passionate niche subculture, or whatever you want to call it. But I think by and large that we're just human beings, speaking generally, at least people that are maybe more dependent on technology than others, we're just hurtling towards like having no attention span whatsoever and being incapable of having long form um, discussions, just sitting and thinking or pondering or meditating or whatever. And I just appreciate so much anytime somebody in the midst of all this, like very short attention span, like instantaneous comfort and content and everything, that somebody, you know, such as yourself and your band are like, you care that much and you spend that much time on it and you put that much thought into it. And it's easy for people to see that and be offended, or like being offended by something is the easiest possible reaction. That's the simplest
Hmm.
an over emotional offended reaction. But you know, clearly that's not your intent. And I mean, it made me think but
Mm.
it is, yeah, it's deeply disturbing in the best possible way. And it's like, to me, it's like a powerful image in a sea of stuff that's sort of extreme, but like looking the same. Like I'm scrolling Instagram, seeing death metal artwork all day. And at a certain point, it's just all kinds of
Mm.
blends together, you know, but an image like
Hmm.
that, you know, it jumps out, man. And the music does
Yeah,
too. I think it's a fitting companion.
thank you. Appreciate that. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the most disturbing thing to me about the cover is uh, it's it's kind of swallowing it. So okay, I'll just be very plain about this. There's a song on the record called "Through the Hologram Service," and it's like all of our records. There are big themes on birth and rebirth and the times in between, you know, the afterlife. With that in mind, um, 2 weeks or so before the first single was going to come out, there was another release from another band that are awesome, that featured cover art that was almost an opposite of ours, except it was painted.
I think I saw it.
And yeah, and if you look at them side by side, they're facing each other. And so if you think about our lyrics, and if you've taken the time to read our lyrics and you believe in the laws of manifestation, it it blows my mind that another record was seemingly manifested as what could be conceived as like a lower form or higher form the other way around, or you know, as above so below, and it was released in the same continent, albeit in the south of the continent or in the north, on the same day. And like metabolizing that really, I was disassociated for 2 weeks, just wondering like, what is this like that I'm walking through right now? The album has a power on a personal level that is extremely difficult to ignore when you're tapped into the oneness of things around you. And I guess I say that the album art is disturbing to me in that sense is because it's impossible to ignore it if you're conscious of it. And yeah, it's a pretty powerful thing to me. So yeah, it's a cover, right?
I've had many similar experiences of pouring not just musical creativity and like my experience with writing songs and riffs and parts and stuff like that. But trying to channel like creative power or whatever you want. I mean, I'm pretty like meat and potatoes about the shit, but like mystical energy or whatever, there was periods of time where I was working on records and I was really diving into like the Crowley chaos magic and all that kind of stuff
Mm,
and meditation and dream diaries and stuff like that.
mm.
And yeah, I don't consider myself to be like I'm a skeptic for sure. I'm like one of the most cynical people that I know. I'm like one of the most skeptical people that I know, but science is basically, I mean, this is a very dumbed down description of what science is, but it's like being able to prove something with evidence where you can do the same thing over and over, you get the same results over and over, you produce the same evidence over and over, you do something the same and the same thing happens enough, then it's becomes a scientific hypothesis or theory, or then accepted as a scientific fact or whatever. I found that when I was really drawing from what I would describe as like creepy shit, you know, um, things would happen like really inexplicably bizarre, powerful, sometimes terrifying, but definitely like disorienting things that would make me
Yeah.
experience like really severe derealization or
Mm.
depersonalization, or just really bizarre stuff that sort of transcended coincidence, so i
So,
i, I understand.
yeah. So no more necromancy for you, I would
Nah,
say.
man. So I did it in Arkansas for a long time. I was in a band with these guys, and I've talked about it on this podcast a little bit, but never gone into detail. But we found a house. We rented this house like in the middle of nowhere in Arkansas. We had 33 acres, um, and it was a very strange place. The architecture was very bizarre. There were no right angles, so where the floor
Oh,
met the
weird.
walls, it was we had heard all kinds of different like sort of urban legends about who the people that
Yep.
built it. They were like former hippies and this and that. um but that's the first time I kind of started delving into that sort of stuff, and I never believed in like hauntings or anything like that until I lived in that house. And so I stopped
Yeah.
doing it. Like so much really crazy, some of the stuff that happened was like incredibly dangerous. I
Mm.
like experienced some stuff that was like borderline life threatening and that sort of thing. So I stopped doing it. Uh, and then I was working on the Spirit Adrift album, Divided by Darkness. I was
Mm.
reading a book about Led Zeppelin and how Jimmy Page bought Crowley's mansion and was like really getting into the yeah, chaos magic, I guess you could call it. And I've even read that some of the guys in the band blamed him for like bad things that happened. Like Robert Plant blamed him for a while for bad things that happened with his family and stuff like that. And so my dumb ass was like, I should get back into that stuff. And so I tried it with Divided by Darkness, and I learned my lesson that time. Enough stuff happened where I was like, I think
Mm.
I'm going to put that specific brand of inspiration or creative channeling aside. I'm going to find some other means of writing songs.
Yeah. No, good on you for tapping into that though. Like I also have tapped into different compounds for different records. And there are other compounds that I'd like to really soak in for future records that also frankly just scare the absolute shit out of me. So I have a lot of admiration for people that do embrace those really scary aspects of exploration, the that the creative pursuit, or at least being able to draw it into their creative expression. Because you know you'll hear a record and it's like, fuck, this is super sick, this is super cool, but it never really does justice to the person going through what they're going through to produce that record, which is a deeply personal period. Usually, I'm sure it sounds like that record probably, if you listen to it, probably takes you back to those 2 or 3 years that were surrounding it, or
Yeah,
yeah,
fortunately,
yeah,
I just don't ever listen to my own stuff. But
yeah, okay. Yeah.
I remember a specific day. Um, One of my bandmates in Arkansas who lived in that house with me was a big comic book fan, and he was one of the wildest minds and personalities that I've ever known. But he was telling me forever to read this comic or graphic novel, whatever, called The Invisibles. And I had read, a lot of Alan Moore at this point. He's always been a big inspiration. And Alan Moore is into that kind of stuff, and Grant Morrison, who wrote The Invisibles, is into that kind of stuff. But I just put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off. And I'm writing Divided by Darkness, and a lot of it was about division, obviously, like what I perceive to be forces that are actively at work trying to get us to hate each other and be afraid.
Mm.
And I was writing this in 2016, 17, somewhere around there. And I'm reading The Invisibles, and there's a part where they're walking around Washington D.C. and they're talking about how corrupt the United States government is, and they're going through the whole history, borderline like Illuminati stuff, creepy CIA stuff, the whole history of the corrupt shadow government of the United States or whatever. And there's a character that's pulling out tarot cards, and each tarot card is like numbered or whatever. And there's certain categories of tarot card. And I turn the page, and it turns out a lot of other people had a similar experience with this. She pulls out a tarot card that says Trump 16 on it.
Oh.
And this is while Trump is, campaigning to be president. But this was a graphic novel written in the 80s.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I'm in this whole world internally writing a record about us being divided, and all this psychic warfare and manipulation being
Mm.
done on us, through the media or through politicians or through whoever, maybe foreign enemies. We don't know. Maybe it's a spiritual thing. Who knows? And I'm reading a comic that was written in the 80s where they're describing all of this stuff. And I turn the page and it says Trump 16. And I had to walk out of my house. I guess that was
Wow.
just the description of that specific tarot card. It was like the 16th tarot card, and it was a Trump card. But in that moment, to me, I mean, that was like psychologically damaging for sure.
Oh,
Those.
oh, I totally get it. And I don't know what it is about printed media being able to have those intersections with like those, I don't want to really call them like magic moments, but they kind of do feel oddly magical in that sense, that it's pretty difficult to ignore, like I think it's pretty cool that you can be talking about a person or thinking about a person in your own head, and a car might pull up and there'll be a number plate with like a nickname that you had for that person or something like that. So pulling out, that card, a book that follows you around. There's a lot of experiences that we have, and yeah, I'm with you. I've had like the psychological hammer of just like, what do I do with this? But in the same token, it usually means that I'm at the right place at the right time, and I can't ignore whatever's going on around me. But yeah,
That's
it makes me.
that's the conclusion that is safe to arrive at. I think I made the mistake in the past of, there's certain signs that I feel like I receive when I'm being creative or really trying to work on something that I feel is meaningful or whatever. And I used to assign meaning to these perceived signs or the universe speaking to me or whatever. I used to try to, you know, put, yeah, just assign more
Mm,
meaning than was there, or sort of allow my own biases to
mm,
direct me a certain way. Whereas now,
mhm,
after years of this, I'm kind of just like, it's what you said. I'm just like, okay, I'm supposed to be right here and I'm supposed to be paying attention.
mhm, mhm.
Uh,
It's pretty cool, man. life experience is pretty fucking wild. What do you think happens when we die?
Well, nobody knows, and anybody that says they know is lying. Um, I think I think what we can be fairly sure of, although the laws of physics seem to be rewritten pretty frequently, but it appears if you accept conventional physics that matter and energy just sort of gets recycled
Mm-hmm.
just on a physical level. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's like at a certain point in my life, I became, instead of being 100% anti-religious, which I've been most of my life, definitely all of my young life and teen life and in my 20s and everything, there was a turning point for me where I sort of came to the obvious realization, or it should have been obvious, that science and religion, if the people are doing it, you know, practicing science or practicing religion with what I would consider like the proper intention, they're sort of trying to answer the same questions. And a lot of things in the past that would have been looked at as supernatural, you know, if you took a nuclear reactor back to like the 1200s or something, they would think that that was supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
If you took a stealth bomber and flew it over like King Arthur's castle, they would be like, that's a fucking demon from hell. Like they would have a supernatural element. So if you apply that to a long enough timeline, a lot of stuff that now seems supernatural or outside of the laws of science or physics, it's just because we haven't measured it yet.
Mm.
We haven't measured consciousness. We haven't identified consciousness. We don't know what consciousness is. Speaking about the brain is not ever sufficient enough to explain what consciousness is. You know, if we're speaking
Yeah.
about the brain just biologically and medically and scientifically. So the only answer is I don't know. And
Mm.
yeah, what do you think?
Well, before I answer that, there is a lot of new science that is looking into whether I mean, there's no science to evidence that consciousness is generated within our body. But there are some people that believe our brains may be like big satellite dishes that are tapping into our consciousnesses, which are outside of the stratosphere somewhere, which to me makes more sense in a lot of ways, especially when you think about brain damage and things like that. Sure, it creates new challenges for the body to send electrical signals throughout the body, but the personality is still there somewhere. The spirit's still there somewhere. So that's an interesting thing to think about. And of course, you know, I'm young in my I guess scale of life here, so my beliefs are most likely going to change and evolve and shapeshift and stuff over the time. But right now, that's an interesting one. But I I feel that, you know, if we consider those intersections we're talking about feeling anchored with other feelings like deja vu, I I don't know. I feel like I've certainly, at the very least, met other people that I know for sure have been here and lived lifetimes here before. So I'd like to think that at some point when people are at peace, they do get a rebirth. But I guess we'll find out pretty soon. Or I'll just have to smoke more DMT and, you know, ask my spirit guides what's going on there.
Yeah,
But
there's
yeah.
something there's something comforting about people all over the world who have never met each other, who have had wildly different life experiences, using a psychedelic substance to tap into something that appears to be a separate objective thing
Mm.
that's outside of them, that's
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
the same no matter who you are or where you are. And you know, I'm really into near death experiences and stuff like that. I've
Mm.
gotten pretty close myself, and
Shit, what happened? Was this related to the Arkansas Winchester house or wherever it was you were?
No, not really, man. I almost drank myself to death.
All right.
I got really close, and it was like a really super duper long process. And it like one of the things I remember the most is there were sensations, physical, I guess you would describe them, but it was all almost like extra sensory. It was like
Mm,
I was experiencing stuff with senses that I've only ever tapped into on like really crazy psychedelic experiences, you know.
mm.
But these sensations to me felt like something conscious that wasn't me trying to save my life.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah,
So would
like
you say that,
go ahead.
like, is that God? Is that God, or is that like what do you interpret that to be?
I don't know. It could
Yeah.
just be it could just be that we have a survival instinct that is so
Mm,
strong and so powerful that it will do anything, use any means necessary to try to wake you up to the fact that you're about to die, maybe.
mm, mm,
Um, but I mean, God is just a word that we use to try to describe stuff that's like indescribable at this point in human history. That's the way I look at it. So
mm,
could be, yeah, it could be. But no,
mm.
not related to the West Fork thing. I did see a guy, I'm pretty sure, get murdered, but I'm not sure how much danger I was in. But I'm not prepared to speak
Cool.
about that publicly.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Whoa.
Dude, so there's a tradition on this podcast. I've kind of forgotten the past few folks that I've talked to, but what's your favorite Morbid Angel record?
Gateways, which
Cool.
is fitting given the conversation that we're having right now. But yeah, gateways. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy most Morbid Angel records, but gateways is definitely the darkest, heavier, lowest. Yeah, to me. Um,
It makes sense, man. It makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
Well, hey, what do you guys have going on? Shout out the band, the socials, the tours, whatever
Yeah, thanks.
anything you want to talk about that we haven't. Go ahead.
Very good. So we just came back from an East Coast tour. So yeah, that was our second US tour this year. So a little bit of time off just to kind of get into the groove of things. We're still writing. Um, we may be back in the studio demoing new songs pretty soon. And we are overdue to book some cross Canada dates, which sorry Canada, I know we've been neglecting you and stuff, but we will get out there. So there are talks with some other bands about doing that. Nothing I can announce just yet. As far as the band socials, you don't need to know how to type in the funny AE in our name to find us. So as long as you just spell it out, ATRAE BILIS, you'll find us on Facebook, Instagram. Um, yeah, they're the primary kind of contact points for the band. And then 20 Buck Spin has got a store. We've just launched a new US store with Masker merch, which is great. So anybody in the States wanting any merch that's separate to 20 Buck Spin can find some stuff there. We'll have some updated merch there pretty soon as well. Um, and yeah, we've definitely got some other projects happening behind the scenes, but yeah, just not really at a point where we can give too much away there. But yeah, we are definitely staying busy. So
Cool, man. If you feel like it, email me links to whatever you want me to put on the description down here,
cool.
and I'll do it.
Thanks, man.
Um, yeah. All right. So we tried to figure out what happens after you die. Is there anything else we need to try to help the people figure out?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's actually kind of had like any crazy fucking evidence based story of what actually happens. I guess leave it in the comments for us to read about, and then
Cool,
maybe you
man.
can have a chat with them on the next episode, and I can tune in and hear all about it.
Yeah, we'll try to get to the bottom of it, man.
Absolutely.
Dude, David, thank you for coming on here. Is there anything else you want to say to the folks listening?
To the folks listening, I don't know, just be kind to each other. Um, yeah, stay humble, be grateful for what you got, and yeah, I don't know, just just be excellent to each other, as the wild stallions would say.
Wise
Hell yeah.
words from a wise man. Really enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, man, me too. Thanks again for the invite, and yeah, I hope we get to chat again soon, whether it's at a show or any other means. It'd be good to meet in person, I think.
Right on. I look forward to it, man. Everybody go check out Atrae Bilis. Aumicide. It fucking rules, and you will love it if you love metal. I'm very confident of that. Cheers, everybody.
Riff.